Welcome to the ABCs of Preschool, the show that covers all things from parenting to childcare. And we're going to get real about how not just to survive, but thrive in the early years. I'm your host, Miss Amber. I'm a mom of 5 and early childhood expert with over 25 years in the industry. Whether you're a parent, an educator, or just curious about early childhood education, this podcast is for you. Each week, we're going to dive into what life looks like raising little ones with special guests, industry experts, and personal stories that will leave you inspired and empowered. Get ready to explore, imagine, and discover the beautifully messy that comes with these magical years. Buckle up, because thriving during the early years is a wild and rewarding ride. Hello, it's Miss Amber with the ABCs of Preschool podcast. This is episode, I don't even know, 48 or 47. I don't even think anybody's listening, but I keep trekking away. And I'm going to be honest, it's freaking scary sometimes. I think, what the hell am I doing? Is this going to pay off? Am I helping anyone? Is anybody listening? But I have this dream and I believe in it. So I keep doing it. So today I'm going to be talking about parenting, and it's so hard to know, like, how do I parent? Are you a new mom? Are you a new parent? There's so much information. When I had my kids, a long time ago in 2000, I had my first son, and the internet was still fairly new, right? So a lot of things I learned was actually I had to go to Barnes and Noble, the bookstore, and I had to read books. And I picked up a book. I can't even tell you the name of it now, but it was just about having kids and babies on sleep cycles. And that was like the best book I ever read. But what to expect when you're expecting, like what to expect in your first year of parenting, like I read all those books. But now, today in our society, the information is freaking overload. And there's so many conflicting things of, how do I raise my kids? How do I raise my baby? If you're thinking about becoming a parent, or maybe you are a new parent, or maybe you have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, and you just feel maybe overwhelmed. The first thing I want to tell you, it's normal. It's so normal, because all of a sudden you're responsible for this human being, a new human being in the world. And the weight and the responsibility of that is great. It's huge, right? It's huge. You don't want to mess them up. Well, let me tell you, you're going to make mistakes. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. So today I just wanted to talk about parenting. I was on my walk today, and I've just been doing a lot of reflecting, because all of my kids are adults now. And the other night, my husband and I, we're getting old, because we work out during the day, we'll walk, we'll do all our work. And then at night, we just chill. We like to watch Netflix. We are a Netflix and chill kind of couple. And as we were watching TV in the living room, like 2 of the boys were in the kitchen. They were cooking their own dinner. And then my daughter came home around 10 that night. So that was like 7 o'clock at night, 7:30. And then 2 of the boys were like, cooking dinner together. And my husband turns around to me, and, he's not their dad, he's their stepdad. He's an amazing stepdad. But he turned to me and he was like, "You're such a good mom. Like, you did a really good job." And I was like, "Wow, yeah, thank you." Because when my kids were younger, I taught them how to cook. And when they got old enough, like 8, 9, and 10, they were responsible for a meal during the week. And so on Sunday, they would have to look for the recipe they wanted to use. They'd have to write it down. They would have to figure out what they needed at the grocery store. And then I would help them cook that dinner during the night. And it was a great bonding experience with my kids, but also a great way. I wanted to raise my kids, especially I have 3 boys and a girl. I wanted my boys to learn how to cook just as much as I wanted my daughter, because I didn't want them to go into a relationship with their partner not knowing how to cook. I wanted them to be able to support themselves. And so the other night, my husband was like, "Wow, you just did a really great job." And I just got to watch my boys cook. And then around 10 o'clock, my daughter came home from work, and she was really mad because her older brothers ate some of her rice. I told her, like, we have a full house right now. Which I freaking love it. I love it. So I have my 18-year-old daughter with us and my 20-year-old son. they're all working full time. And then my 22-year-old son just came home from full time active duty from the Air Force, and now he's on reserve. So he's adjusting back home, living with us, getting on his 2 feet because he's working on flying because he's going to be ultimately his goal is to be at the airlines as a pilot. So it's a full house. And then my girlfriends, and it's just awesome. I freaking love it. So they're adults. So like they're working, they're standing on their own 2 feet, they pay their gas, they pay their insurance, they pay bills. It's awesome. But it's really cool to see. So like my daughter came home at 10 o'clock at night and she was like grumbling in the kitchen that they ate her fried rice, but then she's like, I'll just cook something else. So then she starts cooking. And then again, it was like, wow, like they're really good human beings, but it wasn't easy when they were little. It was hard. I made so many mistakes. But today's episode, I just want to share like some of the ways I raised my kids. And I do believe I'm an expert in early childhood education. Like I love kids. But, as a mom, my kids grew out of the early childhood phase, right? They graduated preschool and I had to then go through the preteen years, the teenage years, the young adult years. So all of it constantly was a learning. It was all learning all the time because, first of all, your kids change rapidly, right? From 0 to 5, the amount of growth they have is it just ginormous. And then when they go into elementary school and then preteens and then teenagers, so there's just so much growth happening all the time and they're changing and evolving all the time. So, as parents, I think one of the biggest things I want to encourage us all to know is that it's nothing is set in stone ever. Like, and one child may need something completely different than the other child. And I think that's probably my biggest thing. If you're a parent of multiples, we have to realize that what worked for our oldest may not work for our youngest, and we have to adapt. And I think the biggest thing I will say is give grace. Grace to your kids, but grace to yourself. Because I look back and there's moments where life was really, really stressful. And sometimes I snapped and yelled and took it out on the kids where that was not their fault, that I should take it out on them. And that just happens sometimes as parents, right? We're tired, we're exhausted, we're frustrated. You may be fighting with your partner and then it goes out on your kids. But looking back, I think the biggest thing is giving yourself grace, knowing that when we come to realization, first off, that we are not perfect, we're never going to be perfect. Own it and accept it, but accept that you want to do better, be better, always grow, always learn, and always want to do better. Now, doing better, I don't think means translating into doing everything for your kids. I think one thing I've seen over the years in my schools is that more and more kids are coming into my program having a hard time doing things. I think part of being a parent is being a teacher, a leader through grace and kindness for our kids, but leading by example. And I think the biggest thing that I think worked in the long run as a mom now of adults looking backwards is I always age appropriately expected my kids to do things on their own. So even from an early age, so like when they started talking, if we went to a restaurant, they would order their food. And now a couple of my kids were very outgoing, and that was an easy task for them. And then my youngest, that was not an easy task for her. She was so shy, but she did it, and I would help her through it. Is taking ownership of what their needs are and teaching them how to speak their needs. I think is a really important thing. They would have little chores when they were like in kindergarten and stuff, like make your bed, or, they'd have a chore chart. Like one would maybe dry the dishes or help unload the dishwasher with me, things like that, things that are easy and tangible for little ones to do. I think giving them chores and giving them a little bit of responsibility also gains confidence in themselves. If everything is always done for them, they will be scared to try new things as they grow. And I think one of my biggest successes looking back was I really promoted independence in my kids. And I really realized even early on when they were young and 5 and 6 and 4, and that one day it's going to go so fast. And one day they're going to fly. And it's my job to teach my kids how to fly. And I think sometimes with the noise and everything that there's so much information, I think it's easy to forget that. Our job as parents is to teach these little humans to be amazing humans that can fly and stand on their own and to thrive on their own. And so it starts from when they're really young. So my kids always had chores, not a whole lot, but they had responsibilities. When we were at restaurants, they had to order for themselves. I really encouraged them to talk to my adult friends. I never accepted being shy because I also really tried not to have labels on them. I really tried not to say, "Oh, you're really smart," or "You're such an athlete." I would praise their job. "Oh, you did a really great job at soccer today," or "Oh, I loved how you handled your friend," things like that. But I think putting labels on kids, like "you're smart" or "you're whatever it is," I don't know. I want them to have their own labels. I want them to come into their own just how they're supposed to. I think as parents, we have to also remember that we were young too, and we're all on a journey. All of us are on a journey. And just like our kids are on their own journey, and we are going to mess up and we are going to screw them up at times. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, all of us carry things from our own childhood. Our kids are going to do the same thing. They're going to carry things and think of the things that we made mistakes on. So just realize we're going to make mistakes. But I think open communication is another really big thing. I think you try to put your kids into boxes into what you want them to be and into a box if you want them to be a total athlete and just work them, constantly and they're on like 5 different teams and they're rushing around every single day. Check yourself. Is that your dream or their dream? I never took school very serious for my kids. I wanted them to do a good job, but I never demanded A's and B's ever because that was not capable. Some of my kids were not capable of A's and B's. What I wanted my kids to do is to do their best. But I never said, "Oh, you have to get an A," or "Oh, you have to do homework for 2 hours," or "You can't do this." I just never did that. I always wanted them to learn and grow on their own time frame. I wanted to celebrate my kids who they were becoming as individuals. I think is really important too, is recognizing what they need from you and having that time with you. I used to do date nights with my kids and take them out to dinner one by one. Another thing was as they got older, they knew like their dad and I set a rule when they were even really young about cars. Like I wasn't going to be the parent that just handed over a brand new car to my kid, and not knocking any of you that have, but I wanted my kids just to always appreciate things. So even like if they want a new iPhone or if they wanted a new Xbox, I didn't buy a lot of stuff for them during the year. They would get like their Christmas presents, a birthday present, and that was it. And if they wanted something, they'd have to earn it. They'd have to work around the house. Even though I was okay financially, I wanted to give my kids the tools to teach them how to have a good work ethic. That's probably one of the biggest things I'm really proud of is that when they were younger, they knew when it was time to drive, like they had to save up money and their dad and I would match whatever money they saved up and we would put it towards a car. So like it's funny, like one of my kids saved up a lot of money and got a really nice car because we matched it. Like the other kid didn't save up so much, right? So he got like a mediocre car. And then another kid really didn't save up. So he got kind of a clunker of a car. So it's fun, but they took pride in ownership and then they would work harder for another car. So, and they pay for their gas. So I would pay for like medical and like car insurance for a time, cell phones, but like things were I'd pay and take care of. And then as they started becoming 18, I would kind of wean them off. And I'm really proud now. Like all of them say to me and their dad, like they're really glad that we taught them, chores and independence and how they had to work for the things they wanted because they have the things they want now because they work really hard for it. And I remember for myself, I started working at like 14 or 12. I was like the neighborhood babysitter and I loved it. And I think that could start when our kids are really young. I think our kids need to be outside and exploring and in nature. And we limited screen times too a lot. Like that was a limit. They couldn't be on their iPads. They couldn't be video gaming for hours on end. They had to go outside and play. But I think, just looking back, probably one of my biggest things on how to freaking raise our kids is not forcing them on a journey that you exactly want for them. Recognizing that your child is on their own path and supporting them through it. If they want to go and ride horses, let's go try to find a way for them to have horseback riding lessons. If they want to try soccer, have them try to do soccer. But allowing them to learn how to do things on their own is so important, even when they're little. When they're leaving for preschool, have them help you pack their lunch. That was another thing my kids did. Like they helped pack their lunch. They had to make their lunches. And so many times, like a lunchbox would go missing and be under their bed and it would be like fuzzy in like 2 weeks, but they had to clean it out, you know? So it's a gentle, loving, kind way of parenting. And I'm really glad I parented that way. There was rules, there was expectations as well, and I was always talked about natural consequences. There's always consequences to things. So if my kids did make bad choices or they would get in trouble, they would have timeouts, they would go in their room, they would have to think about things like I would take things away. There is consequences too, and that's not a bad thing. I don't think we should shy away from that. Our job as parents are to be teachers, truly. And we don't want chaos in our house. And kids like regulations and rules and boundaries. They thrive on that, actually. They thrive on boundaries. Boundaries, especially when they're loving, kind, and full of grace. And when you're strict, I don't think the absolute strict kind of parenting works, the forcing them to do things all the time. Choose your battles too, like really choose your battles. Like if they're throwing a tantrum because they don't want to put their shoes on, that doesn't mean like they should be totally grounded, right? Like choose your battles. Like my kids wanted to dye their hair when they were younger. So I would do like the temporary hair dye. Who cares? It's just hair, So I guess the biggest thing on this, I just want to say is like go with your gut, but really go with kindness and love and remind yourself every day that your child is going to be an adult one day. And how do you want to get them there? And how do you want to see them as an adult? Is it your idea you have for them, or are you going to allow them to become the person that they were meant to be on this earth and support them through their journey? Wishing you guys just a really wonderful week. I don't even know if that was really on topic, but I know it's hard. It's hard to figure out how to freaking raise our kids these days. But I do want to say, I think that boundaries, love, and kindness, respect, and nurturing and expectations are all really good things for our kids. You guys have a great week. Come visit me at thelovingstartway.com.
Thanks for listening. I appreciate you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hear this podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss the next episode. For more information on how to work with me, Miss Sandberg, visit me at thelovingstartway.com or follow me on Insta at thelovingstartway.